A secret document was delivered to the desk of King Charles that changed everything. It wasn't from a political rival or a foreign government, but from his own brother, Prince Edward. For years, the public believed the royal family was unified, but behind closed doors, a brutal battle for power, property, and millions of dollars was reaching a breaking point. Charles thought his word was absolute law, but Edward brought the one thing the king never expected: receipts. What really happened in that private meeting room shattered a decades-long alliance, leaving the monarchy divided in a way it may never recover from. And the most shocking part? The true mastermind behind this entire trap was a royal figure no one saw coming. Because the final piece of evidence involves a secret alliance that changes the future of the monarchy forever. If you love diving deep into the untold stories behind the palace gates, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Join our community so you never miss a single chapter of these fascinating royal secrets. Now, let's reveal how this hidden civil war truly began. The illusion of absolute royal authority shattered the moment Prince Edward's legal team laid out a single, heavily documented reality. For years, a quiet assumption dictated that the crown could redistribute family assets at will, reshaping estates and reassigning legacies to fit a new, streamlined vision. But a massive 120-room Tudor Gothic mansion sitting on 51 acres of prime land changed the rules of the game entirely. Bagshot Park was never just a residence. It was a fortress of legal protection that a certain royal faction completely underestimated. Insiders say the push to reclaim this specific estate wasn't just about modernization. It was about a highly lucrative asset, valued at an estimated £30 million. But a hidden detail in the property's history made any attempt to seize it an incredibly dangerous move. Back in 1996, when the previous tenants left, the historic estate was in near ruin, outdated and completely neglected. Reports suggest the institution didn't even want to keep it, with active plans to convert the grand structure into a commercial hotel or conference center. That is when Edward stepped in, signing a strict 50-year lease that carried an immense financial burden. He didn't rely on public funds to salvage the property. Sources indicate he poured £1.36 million of his own private earnings into the immediate massive restoration. The total cost to rescue the estate neared £3 million, a burden carried heavily on his own shoulders. This financial commitment created a massive double standard that senior officials desperately tried to hide from the public eye. While other prominent family members lived luxuriously in grand lodges for decades without ever paying market rate, Edward's rent was officially increased to a staggering £90,000 a year to reflect true market value. He followed every rule, paid his own way, and systematically secured his position. In 2007, he took things a step further, utilizing a private entity to pay an additional £5 million to extend that lease to an unbreakable 150 years. This gave him the absolute legal right to control the property, live there undisturbed, and even retain the profits if the lease was ever transferred. When the subtle pressure finally started mounting for Edward to step aside and hand over the keys, the decision-makers thought he would quietly comply to keep the peace. They genuinely believed a simple request from the top of the hierarchy would be enough to make him surrender his life's work. Instead, they walked straight into a legal minefield. Because Edward hadn't just kept every single financial receipt from the past few decades, he possessed a completely different, highly classified layer of defense. And what his legal team pulled out of the vault next would leave the entire palace legal department completely paralyzed. The palace legal department quickly realized they weren't just fighting Prince Edward. They were fighting a brilliant, long-term trap set by Prince Philip before he passed away. For decades, Philip watched the inner workings of the institution and knew exactly how quietly it could move against anyone it no longer found useful. He foresaw the exact pressure his youngest son would face once the leadership shifted. Reports suggest that is precisely why, in his final days, Philip ensured a highly specific ironclad document was signed and locked away. It was a calculated move designed to protect Edward's legacy when the inevitable storm arrived. This hidden shield was a formal letter of intent, signed by Queen Elizabeth II and witnessed by Philip himself. The document explicitly tied the vast Bagshot Park estate directly to the prestigious Dukedom of Edinburgh for Edward's entire lifetime. Rumours indicate the legal weight of this paper effectively blocked any future monarch from slicing up the family assets or reclaiming the property under the guise of restructuring. Elizabeth had watched the intense pressures building around money and titles, and she wanted this specific legacy permanently protected. But the true genius of the plan was how it was designed to stay completely hidden until the exact moment it was needed most. When the new regime initiated an aggressive financial audit of royal leases, they truly believed Bagshot Park was an easy target to reclaim and monetize. Sources claim officials were completely blind to the fact that Philip had already insulated his son from this exact corporate-style takeover. Edward didn't just have a standard lease, he had the documented, combined will of the two longest-serving figures in modern royal history. If the institution tried to override those signatures, it would fundamentally compromise the validity of every agreement the Crown had ever made. Yet, even with this massive legal barrier in place, the opposition wasn't ready to back down just yet. Instead of retreating, a different faction within the palace decided to shift their strategy from property to something far more personal. They believed that if they couldn't force Edward out of his home, they could pressure his household by targeting his wife, Sophie. A surprise move was quietly launched, aimed at a prized possession she had held close for 25 years, and this sudden escalation would trigger a dramatic confrontation that threatened to expose secrets the monarchy had desperately tried to bury. A sudden administrative raid on a private collection completely shattered the delicate peace between the two royal households. It was framed to the public as a routine jewelry audit, a simple national heritage check managed by Queen Camilla's office. But insiders say the real objective was far more calculated, directly questioning the ownership of a prized possession. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, had worn for 25 years. At the absolute centre of this hostile inventory sat the stunning anthem tiara. This wasn't just a random piece pulled from a standard royal vault. Queen Elizabeth II had personally commissioned it for Sophie's wedding day in 1999, carefully crafting it from 4 antique honeysuckle elements taken from Queen Victoria's private collection. For nearly 2 decades, this unique crown was the definitive symbol of Sophie's royal identity. Reports suggest she was never granted open access to the grand state tiaras like other senior figures, making this specific piece incredibly personal. Stripping it away would leave her visual status completely diminished. Yet, the legal argument brought forward by the auditors carried an incredibly sharp message. They claimed that because the gold and gemstones originated from the era of Queen Victoria, the piece had to be classified as crown property. According to their logic, it belonged in the central vault, requiring formal permission just to be taken out for official use. This aggressive interpretation set a highly dangerous precedent for everyone in the family. If the institution could successfully claw back a personal wedding gift, it meant dozens of private items granted by Elizabeth during her 70-year reign were suddenly vulnerable. But the planners of this audit completely underestimated the deep emotional history attached to these pieces. The public still vividly remembered a past controversy when a historic necklace belonging to a departed princess was returned to the vault, only to be redesigned into a brooch and worn publicly by the new regime. Now, the exact same pattern appeared to be repeating itself, targeting Sophie's most personal heirloom. The auditors believed their cold legal language would force an immediate surrender from the Edinburgh household. They had no idea that Edward was already holding a devastating piece of counter-evidence that would completely paralyze their efforts. And his next warning would threaten to drag the most uncomfortable secrets of the past right back into the public eye. Prince Edward's legal team delivered a final, uncompromising warning that changed the entire nature of the conflict. Insiders say they threatened to release highly personal, unredacted letters written by Queen Elizabeth II if the aggressive audit on Sophie's jewelry wasn't completely dropped by the end of the day. These weren't standard administrative notes, they were deeply private records explicitly stating the late Queen's wish for Sophie to maintain absolute, undisputed ownership of her personal wedding gifts. But the true danger of these documents extended far beyond a dispute over diamonds. The contents of those letters contained descriptions that could permanently damage decades of careful public relations work. Reports suggest the text laid bare the late Queen's long, icy distance toward Camilla during the early years, detailing tensions that never fully disappeared. The current leadership had invested an immense amount of time transforming the public image of the Queen Consort, lifting her from a highly controversial figure to a respected institutional staple. Exposing these raw, authentic thoughts from the most revered monarch in modern history would dismantle that carefully crafted image overnight. It was a masterclass in leverage, showing that Edward held the power to disrupt the stability of the current reign. To ensure his position was completely airtight, Edward's team produced a matching piece of historical evidence that the opposition never saw coming. Back in 1999, Edward had personally collaborated with master jewelers to design a bespoke set of black and white pearl jewelry specifically to accompany the anthem tiara. Sources indicate that while the base materials were technically funded through institutional channels, Edward retained the unique artistic design rights. His lawyers brilliantly argued that the tiara and the custom pearl set formed a single inseparable artistic unit tied to his personal intellectual property. Splitting them apart was legally impossible without violating his design rights. The message sent back to the administrative offices was loud, clear, and incredibly heavy. Edward had drawn a definitive line, moving the anthem tiara into a highly secure, private safe guarded by his own personal security team. He made it known that no one would be reviewing, reclassifying, or seizing his family's history without a massive public struggle. But paper warnings and legal text alone weren't going to bring this hidden war to an end. The conflict required a powerful mediator to step directly into the room and deliver the ultimate reality check. And when the most disciplined member of the royal family finally decided to intervene, the entire power dynamic shattered completely. The moment Princess Anne walked into the private meeting room, the entire balance of power at the top of the monarchy instantly evaporated. She skipped all polite formalities and went directly on the attack, ready to defend the legacy that had already been settled. Rumors indicate Anne delivered a line so sharp it left the room in absolute silence, warning that if a previous monarch's signature on a lease or deed of gift is worthless today, then any current signature means even less tomorrow. It was a direct blow to the very foundation of royal authority, showing that a king's power only works if past promises are fiercely honored. Anne didn't view the ongoing disputes over the multi-million-dollar estate and the wedding tiara as separate issues. According to sources, she made it clear they were part of the exact same overreach, driven by a desire to centralize control at all costs. She pointed out that Edward had paid market rate, invested millions of his own funds, and held an ironclad 150-year lease that could not be legally challenged. But what made Anne's intervention truly terrifying for the opposition was a completely different threat she laid squarely on the table. Insiders say she promised to personally oversee an uncompromising, highly public audit of the Queen's entire household expenses and staffing allocations if the pressure didn't stop. As the most disciplined and respected working royal, Anne carried the unique credibility to make that financial threat an absolute reality. She also strongly shut down the ongoing administrative push to alter the royal status and protection of Edward's children, Lady Louise and James. She made it clear that their future belonged strictly to their parents, completely cutting off outside influence from the current leadership. By the time she finished speaking, the strategy to isolate and weaken the Edinburgh household had completely collapsed. The decision-makers were left trapped with no clean exit strategy, forced to realize that an official surrender was now the only way out. What do you think about Prince Edward's ultimate countermove against the Crown's authority? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay informed on the deepest secrets and hidden history from behind the palace gates, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next fascinating chapter.